The first thing everyone noticed about the car was the sound. Not the roar people expect from something powerful, but a shrill, metallic scream that echoed off storefront windows and made conversations stop mid-sentence. It announced itself before it appeared, like a warning siren for bad decisions. When it finally rolled into the cracked asphalt lot behind the old warehouse, heads turned for all the wrong reasons. Ethan sat behind the wheel, hands tight on the steering wheel, jaw clenched. The interior smelled like hot plastic and cheap leather cleaner. He'd spent so many nights in this driver's seat that it felt more like a confessional than a cockpit. Every mod, every bolt, every wire under the dash carried a memory. Some of pride, most of stubbornness. "Dude," Marcus said from the passenger seat, raising his voice over the exhaust's unsteady howl. "I'm just saying, maybe the turbo doesn't need to spool that hard at idle." Ethan didn't answer. He stared straight ahead, watching the tack needle twitch like it was nervous. He told himself that meant power, potential, proof that he'd built something wild. But lately, it felt more like a heartbeat that couldn't find a rhythm. They shut the engine off, and the sudden silence felt heavier than the noise. Around them, the lot buzzed with people and cars in various states of modification. Neon lights under chassis, hoods popped open, engines revved for attention. This used to feel like home. "Ethan," Marcus tried again, softer now. "You good?" "Yeah," Ethan lied. The word tasted bitter. He climbed out of the car and stepped back to look at it. Widebody kit flaring aggressively, paint wrapped in a matte color that had once seemed bold but now just looked tired. The hood vents were too big, the spoiler too tall, the wheels stretched past reason. Every choice screamed more, louder, faster. It also screamed something else he hadn't wanted to hear. He remembered when it had all started, years ago, when the car was stock and unremarkable. Back then, he just wanted to feel something. After his father died, after the house went quiet and the garage smelled like dust instead of motor oil, he needed a project. Something he could control. His dad had taught him how to change brake pads, how to listen to an engine, how to respect limits. Ethan had nodded through those lessons, young and impatient, never thinking he'd miss them. When the funeral was over and the condolences stopped coming, the garage became his refuge. One mod led to another. Each upgrade felt like progress, like movement away from grief. People noticed. Compliments turned into admiration. Likes piled up online. Ethan learned quickly that louder meant more attention. Extreme meant memorable. And somewhere along the way, restraint started to feel like weakness. "Yo, is that the car from the clip?" someone asked nearby. A phone was already pointed in his direction. Ethan forced a smile. "Yeah, man, that thing's insane," the guy said, awe mixed with disbelief. "You ever worried it's too much?" The question landed harder than Ethan expected. He laughed it off, the sound hollow. "There's no such thing." But later that night, driving home alone, the car lurched when he hit second gear. The turbo surged unpredictably, the rear end stepped out, and for a split second the world narrowed to headlights and fear. He caught it, heart pounding, hands shaking. He pulled over, engine idling rough, and rested his forehead against the steering wheel. His reflection stared back at him in the windshield, eyes bloodshot, face older than he remembered. The car ticked and popped as it cooled, like it was arguing with itself. "What am I doing?" he whispered. The answer didn't come. Instead, his phone buzzed. A message from his sister, Claire. "Haven't heard from you. Mom's worried. Call me." He ignored it and drove home slowly, painfully aware of every vibration, every strange sound. The car no longer felt like an extension of himself. It felt like something he was dragging behind him. The next morning, the car wouldn't start. Ethan tried again. And again. The starter whined uselessly. He slammed his fist against the steering wheel, anger flaring hot and fast. He popped the hood and stared at the chaos beneath. Wires rerouted, components crammed where they barely fit, aftermarket parts stacked on top of each other like a Jenga tower. This was supposed to be mastery. It looked more like desperation. Marcus showed up an hour later. He took one look and shook his head. "You pushed it too far, man." Ethan snapped back without thinking. "You don't know that." Marcus didn't argue. He just met Ethan's eyes, concern plain. I do. Because I've been watching you disappear into this thing. The words hurt because they were true. Ethan turned away, blinking hard. They towed the car to the shop where Ethan worked part-time. The familiar smell of oil and metal should have comforted him, but instead it felt accusatory. The older mechanic on duty, Luis, took a long look under the hood. Why? Luis asked simply. Ethan shrugged. More power. Luis wiped his hands on a rag. Power without balance breaks things. Cars and people. Ethan laughed bitterly. You sound like my dad. Luis looked at him carefully. Smart man. Then, that night, alone in the shop, Ethan stayed late. He pulled parts off the car one by one. Each removal felt like undoing a piece of himself. The oversized turbo, the aggressive tune, the unnecessary add-ons. Beneath it all, the engine looked tired but honest, like it could finally breathe. As the hours passed, memories surfaced uninvited. His dad correcting his grip on a wrench. The quiet pride in his voice. The way he'd said, take care of the machine and it'll take care of you. Ethan sat on the cold concrete floor and cried. Not quietly, not neatly, the kind of crying that left him empty and shaking. He realized he hadn't been chasing speed. He'd been running from stillness, from grief, from the fear that without noise and attention, he'd have to face himself. The next few weeks were different. He rebuilt the car slowly, thoughtfully. Not to impress, but to understand. He tuned it for reliability, for feel. He listened more than he forced. The first time he drove it after, the sound was calmer, deeper. It didn't scream, it spoke. At the next meet, the car didn't draw a crowd right away. No neon, no theatrics. Ethan stood back, hands in his pockets, heart strangely light. A kid approached, eyes wide. Is this yours? Yeah, it's clean, the kid said. Feels right. Ethan smiled, genuinely this time. Thanks. Later, Claire showed up unexpectedly. She walked around the car, then hugged him tight. Mom says you finally called. Yeah, Ethan said. I should have sooner. She looked at him, really looked. You seem, here. He nodded. I am. As the sun dipped and engines fired up around them, Ethan got into the driver's seat. He turned the key. The engine came alive smoothly, confidently. He felt it in his chest, steady and sure. Driving home, windows down, he thought about how close he'd come to losing everything for something that was never enough. The car carried him forward, not recklessly, but faithfully. For the first time in a long while, Ethan wasn't chasing more. He was finally moving on.